Okay,
Okay,
welcome
Joe.
everybody to the webinar with Peter Smith from Schoolshape, an online learning platform. Today is the 31st of August 2020, and thank you ever so much everybody for coming along this evening. We are recording this session as always, so you'll be able to, can we make sure that you turn off your webcams please? Let me just, right, okay, thank you. Right, so if everyone could mute themselves, please, that'd be really handy. Just, well, right, okay, no problem. Anyway, as I was saying, that's the important of the troubleshooting at the beginning. Okay, so thank you ever so much, everyone, for coming along this evening. I'm not sure how many people have heard of Schoolshape before, but the idea of this session is for Peter to tell us all about it and how it can be used in a remote teaching context or in a hybrid learning context. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Peter. If you can maybe introduce yourself, Peter, give us a little bit of background, and then we can launch straight into Schoolshape, if that's okay.
Okay, Joe. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks very much for inviting me along. I was particularly honoured because, in fact, I wasn't quite sure why you invited me in the first place, because Schoolshape is used in the UK, but not to a huge extent. It is used mainly in the USA and in various other countries around the world. Just to explain, first of all, who I am, I've been teaching a little bit like you, Joe. I've been teaching for about 30 years in middle schools and high schools, or what we call senior schools in the UK. I started off teaching in Chesterfield after university and PGCE. In Chesterfield at that time, there was a very big change going on between grammar schools, secondary modern schools, being converted pretty much overnight under a scheme called the Doncaster scheme, to change that system into what we now know as the comprehensive system. So when I started teaching, I was in one of the old secondary modern schools, which was an interesting start to my career, because in those days there was no streaming at all within the school. So my first job was head of German, which sounds very grandiose, but actually it was just a scale 1 teacher's job in those days. Really, the only tools you had in terms of technology was for French. I think it was an en avant course published by Nuffield, which was an oral only, just speaking only course, involving a puppet and a few audiovisual materials. I can remember distinctly the first day that I walked into a classroom, my first German lesson. I was teaching with a course called Vorwärts, and in those days, the most advanced technology was the audio-visual concept. So in the back of the classroom, you would have an open reel tape recorder. You would also have one of those film strip machines where, not slides, but it was a strip which you could transport past a light which would shine it onto a screen. And so the potential for the technology to go wrong was quite great, really, because you had to link up the visual element with the sound element, and it became quite complicated. So my first lesson when I went in was very badly prepared, because I wasn't really ready. And I'll never forget this. There were 30 kids in there of various different abilities, and one kid stood up and basically said, "Sir, why do we have to learn effing German?" Now, I realized at that point that I was very ill-equipped to teach at all, and German was obviously not top of the agenda for those kids. I realized that I was going to have to do something, because if I didn't really respond to that, I'd have to really put up with really having nothing to say to them, or anything at all to progress with. So what I did was,
Oh,
sorry, somebody trying to
no, no,
interrupt
it's
there.
fine. A couple of people, well, a couple of people have turned on their microphones for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
Why.
right,
So
okay.
if I
Yes,
could
yeah,
ask everyone
yeah,
not to turn their microphones on, please, because obviously we're listening to Peter right now. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you. Sorry,
okay.
Peter.
Yeah, so the story there was that teaching a mixed ability class was extremely difficult. And I think and that has always struck me as the most problematic thing with language teaching, is having to deal with the different abilities. Now, in those days, there was a CSE exam, which was for less able students, and O-level exams for the more advanced students, but all those were in the same class. And you had to decide how to deliver the language. So the problem of individualizing work has always been the biggest one, I think, which can possibly be solved by technology. Now, I taught in Chesterfield for 5 years and then moved to Jersey. The schools in Jersey were slightly different, but they also had the Doncaster scheme, which again is the grammar schools, the secondary modern schools. So for the middle schools were very similar to Chesterfield. But in Jersey, the possibility of teaching German and French was very much more immediate for the children, so that the kids were really much more receptive to language teaching. So what I decided then was to try and provide an opportunity for them to learn the culture of a language, and also to connect with students abroad. Now, in the late 70s, as I say, it was just the audio visuals, there were tape recorders, there were 16mm projectors. You could get films from the Goethe Institute and fire them up with the culture of Germany and so on. But once we got into the 1980s, the next technology was video recorders, and that provided an opportunity to bring the culture a little bit more immediately to in front of children, to fire them up and to motivate them. So what I did then in the 80s was to use video recorders with schools in France and in Germany. So with using links with, for example, a school in Brittany, the school there would make videos and exchange them with videos from me. And we would then you could use a mixture of CCAN and PAL video to provide a split screen situation. So you could give the kids the feeling of immediacy, in that they had connections with a school abroad and with real people abroad. So that brought in the element of teaching the culture of the country, and also the personal contact, which I think is vital to learning the language.
Could I just ask you a question, Peter, about
Yes,
that? That's
yes,
fascinating.
sure.
So how did the technology hold up? Because if it was in the 1980s, there must have been, it must have been quite rudimentary, I'd have thought. Challenging, that's the good word, that's the word, yeah.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So, well, the target was, for me, was to get away from the idea of the kids having this idea that they've just got to study for an exam and not, and not understand the culture of the country, or get into conversation with a foreign person. Because I think those two elements are absolutely vital to motivating language learners. Now, you asked about the technology, and that was very, very difficult, obviously, in those days, because you had to, it was, you know, all the recording was linear. So if you were making a tape, it took you a very long time, you know, way into the midnight hours to get the tape right. So what I did was that I got the French students on one side of the screen and the English students on the other side of the screen, made the video up, and then exchanged those videos with with my contacts in France, in Brittany actually, just across the sea.
I think that's brilliant. I love it.
Now, that was so motivating for the kids. Now, as far as the teaching concerned, the target there was to teach the vocabulary that they needed to do that. And that was then followed up by the trip abroad, as it were. So we would go across there, we would go into the school, and the kids would, we would go camping on the local camping municipal. And the other technology that came in the late 80s was the cassette recorder. Now, with the cassette recorder, you could get those little mini ones, and you could actually hand those out to kids. And the advantage of that was that you could, if they went into a school and they were talking to a French person, you could actually you could say to them, well, look, if you don't come back with a recording, you don't do the conversation, then you don't deserve to get your reward for that. So that worked really well, actually, because there was then an assessment that you could do from that work. So going abroad, meeting foreign people has always been the number one, as far as I'm concerned, with teaching, because that really is the reason why we're learning a foreign language, isn't it?
Mm. That's fascinating. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's lovely.
Well, I mean, it wasn't really until the 1990s that that computers came in, and then you could do all that sort of thing much more easily. And of course, then after the turn the 21st century, we then had the internet. But in the 1990s, what you could do was you could make those videos a lot faster, because you could do video recording and so on, and you could make it more real for the kids. But then once we got into the 21st century and we got into the internet, then things became a lot easier, and video to show them the culture of the country. It can be you can just access that. And now, of course, we've got to the stage where anybody can make a video with anything in it. So the sky's the limit now. And the other thing, of course, is what we're doing now is that we can get those kids in front of foreigners, or certainly in front of their culture, as easily as anything. We don't have to go anywhere. We can just provide it for them in the classroom or at home. So it's been a revolution, and I was struggling a little bit there at the beginning of my talk to remember everything that I've done in the past, but this has always been my target, because if they don't want to learn the culture, then I cannot see any reason why they're going to want to do
Sorry, hang on, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Labidi, can you please not turn your microphone on? Thank you. Sorry, Peter.
Okay. I have to say, actually, Joe, your discipline is excellent. I can imagine you in the classroom. I think you.
Well, you know, it is what it is.
Okay, so yeah, so it's a bit of a soliloquy, this, actually, I must say. Normally when I do these meetings, I'm talking to schools on various parts of the world, and you get a response from them, but you're doing very well. So anyway, so we got to the stage now where we have the internet, and that is a revolution. So in the 1990s, once we got over this this problem of the connection between students and getting the culture across, we then got into the stage of the internet, and now, of course, we have a situation where computers actually work when you want them to work, because I think I must have had about 20 years of computers just not behaving as they should, but now they do. And now we have video, so we can put the culture across, and now we have the internet, and we can connect students together very, very easily, not just with ourselves, but we can connect them together, and they can actually work together socially. So I see no reason really why the likes of a Zoom meeting, and Zoom is so well named, isn't it? Because you can use the Zoom idea where you're focusing in on something to teach the minutest details about the language and the grammar, at the same time as zooming out and teaching them about the culture. Anyway, so I bored you enough with myself talking about what I've been doing.
No, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to hear your journey. I mean, I started teaching in the mid-90s. Obviously, you've been teaching a bit longer, but it's really interesting to hear how, you know, talking about the cassette player. I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think that language teachers are always at the forefront of using technology because we have to in order to make the content engaging for the students. And your whole focus on culture is fascinating. I think it's great.
Well, it is interesting that originally, of course, when all these exams that we have at the moment were invented, there wasn't much in the way of technology. And the exams don't seem to have changed much since then. So, so there have been some changes, but maybe not quite enough. But I won't get onto that subject at the moment. Good. Okay, so to cut a long story short, in 2009, I started a little company here in Jersey where I was very fortunate because they were trying to diverse the economy here a bit. We have agriculture, and there is a finance industry and also a tourist industry, but they wanted to put a bit of more diversity into the economy, and we received a small grant to develop some educational software, and so we started a system for schools to submit examinations. A lot of the independent schools in the UK submit, the junior schools submit speaking tests to the senior schools for moderation. And of course, in the old days, they had to record it onto a cassette tape. They put the cassette tape into an envelope and then send it through the post. And then somebody at the other end would have to unpack it and listen to the conversation. Actually, the similar thing has been happening in the USA for a very long time, and they've been using CDs and sending those through the post as well. Anyway, again, to cut a long story short, we developed a system to solve that problem. And then we were asked to provide opportunities for students to practice. And so the idea of producing a language laboratory to enable them to do that was a very short step from an exam system. And so that's what we did. So Schoolshape.com is the address of our company. If you required a language laboratory for your school, you can have a language laboratory called Schoolshape, or you can have one. Say, if your school is called Manor School, for example, you could have a language laboratory called lab.manorschool.com, and you could be linked to that. So you can, with our system, you can have your own language laboratory in your school or university. We also have various websites with resources on, which you're welcome to use, are completely free: FrenchResources.org, SpanishResources.com, GermanResources.org, and ESLResources.com. And if anybody wants to contact me directly, you can get in touch with me at peter@schoolshape.com, or indeed info@schoolshape.com. Right, so I was talking there about the importance of delivering culture to students, and we were mentioning there about Right.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Just one question that's come up from Sebastian, which is it also, an obvious question, is it also free to create a class and have students enrolled in that class? I'm sure you're going to come on to that later, Peter, aren't you?
Absolutely, it is possible to do that. That's right. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, so I'm going to come on to that now.
And again, Sebastian says, are all features on the website free to use? I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure you'll address that in a moment.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so this is a video I took in France quite recently. We were talking about islands just now. This is actually taken on an island in France. I don't know whether anybody will be able to guess what island it is on, but it's actually on in Nantes, on the River Loire. It's called the Ile de Nantes. This giant mechanical elephant is on display there, and you can do rides and things on it. Now, the Ile de Nantes is, as I say, it's just on the mouth of the River Loire, and it's probably one infamous thing about the island there is that it was a center for the slave trade. And on the ground, that ground there, you can see it's a huge area where these mechanical elephants are, was the area where something like 150,000 slaves were shipped off to the Americas, les Antilles and so on, through the French slave trade. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the kind of thing that you want to be teaching in your lessons, but the idea here is that the elephant is representing a part of French culture, if you like. They've actually produced this incredible machine to draw attention to la disparition of the of elephants in the world and wildlife and so on. But I think this other cultural aspect of the history of France kind of is another element that you could put in for, say, for higher level students. And my point is that you can really take any piece of video and use it to teach culture to students. And as a part of that, you can then lead on to teach the language. Obviously, I'm not here to tell anybody how to teach the language, but there seems to be no reason at all why you couldn't put one little bit of culture into every piece of work that students do. Because the more you put in and the more interested they're going to be, and the less reason they're going to be learning the language simply to pass an exam. Right, so I'm just going to show you now how you could use that in a Schoolshape worksheet. I can see that Zoom is slowing this down a little bit.
I've just closed the window because there was some sort of siren thing happening outside. Yeah. So anyway. Are you trying to play the video?
I'm actually just trying to escape this screen here because I can see that it's struggling a little bit. Hopefully it'll catch up in a moment.
Okay. Have you pressed the arrow key?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If it stops, I'll rejoin the meeting.
Well, if you could try, well, as you wish. That's fine. That's fine. Susan's just written in the chat, drawing attention to the slave trade that France was partaking in would be very important in the light of Black Lives Matter, which I think is a very important point. Definitely.
That's right, yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to show you now how you would create a worksheet out of this cultural video. And in Schoolshape, when you log in, you have a choice of going into learning, teaching, worksheets or admin area. And in your worksheet area, you can create worksheets or access other worksheets that you've created. I'll just go back a moment there. Right, sorry, it's just it's going very slow here. Right, Joe, I'm sorry about that, but
That's all right, don't worry.
I've got onto the wrong stage there. Okay, so what you would do is you create a new worksheet, and all the worksheets are kept in a simple album. So you can choose an album for each of your worksheets, just like a folder, if you like, and that's where you'll be keeping them. So in this case, we're going to put it into French worksheets and a title for the worksheet, which is Éléphant. So the language lab is based on a series of worksheets. And when you're creating one of these, you'll have a simple blank page. And you can see at the top, you have the title, which is Éléphant, and the folder it's kept in, which is the French worksheets. And then on the right-hand side, you have a simple menu, which gives you a choice of stimuli and activities. And under stimuli, you have a choice of texts, images, audio, or video. Now, if you're choosing video, you can simply choose a video. Obviously, you can choose a YouTube video, or you can choose one from your computer you've got on your hard disk. And you then upload the video into the worksheet. So there you have your stimulus within your worksheet. So every single worksheet can have a video in. You don't have to have video, of course, but I think it's great to have some cultural aspect in your worksheet about the country of the language. Of course, the sound from the video can be the audio that you want them to listen to. So it could be a listening comprehension if you want. But that's not necessary, because really you can easily put other audio in, which is more suitable for the level that they're at. You can then put a title to the video, and you can either have an instruction or just give it a title to explain what it's about.
So just to clarify, Peter, so what we're looking at right now, we're looking at screenshots of the different steps of creating a worksheet with an embedded video, etc., as opposed to looking at the website itself. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wanted to be clear to everyone. That's what we're looking at.
Absolutely, that's right. Yes.
Great.
Because basically, I'm showing you. This is just a slideshow, and within the slideshow, we've got videos. The reason for that is that I didn't really want to show you a hugely long slideshow, because there is a lot in the language lab, and I didn't want you to have endless slides. But with a video, we can get through material very quickly, and it's very clear.
Great, thank you. No problem.
Like this, yeah. Okay, so we have the video there, and then beneath the video, you can have any form of exercise that you want to go with the video. So you can have text writing exercises, you can have drag and drop exercises, and cloze tests, comprehensions, and so on. Now, I'm just going to show you one of the simpler types of exercise, which is a drag and drop. simply testing a little bit of comprehension at a very simple level. So you can see here that we have below this video, we have an area to put the text in. Any text that you want to use, it can be a hugely long piece of text or just very, very short. And then you can decide whether you want the exercise to be just simply matching up like drag and drop, or if you want a classic cloze test where you can put gaps in. So you can simply paste your text in. In this case, I just put a few simple sentences in French, and then the text is displayed there for you to check. Any words that you want to test, so for example, if you wanted to test éléphant, you would highlight that either by double-clicking on the word or by pulling your mouse over it by highlighting the mouse. And then when you're happy with it, you click Add Gap. And as soon as you do that, the word will be underlined, and you know that that will be a gap in the test. Now, if you want to check what that is going to look like for students, you can just simply start doing the worksheet yourself as the teacher, or you can go back to your home page and reload it. And the exercise will look a little bit like this when you completed it. So the student will be able to just drag the words in, and you can always access these the exercises you created in your storage area, French worksheets. And if you want to look at those any of those worksheets at any time or try them out, you can simply try them out yourself and make sure that it all works correctly.
That's fantastic. And do you get immediate feedback when you complete the test as a student?
Okay, so if you're a student, you do get feedback. I'll show you this a little bit later, but you do get feedback because you will be told which words you've got correct. Now they do have any opportunity they want to do it again, but the software will check how many times they've done it. They can't just sort of keep working at it and get the right answer, but they will be they'll be assessed on how long it's taken to get the right answer and so on. But I'll explain a little bit more about assessment later. This is just the very simple level where you're creating the exercise. And this is just to show you, you can literally create any exercise you want. Okay, so here's another little exercise you can do. If you want them to do a little bit of listening or speaking, you can either click in under stimuli, you can click into audio, or if you want to upload an audio file which you already have, then you can upload that. So the top one there, the top red arrow, is if you want to just record some audio yourself as a French teacher. The bottom one, the upload one, would be if you have an audio file that you want students to work on.
We've just got a question about communicator activities, Peter, if that's okay. So
Sure.
Susan, who's a regular to our webinars, she's asking about sort of the ACFL communicative objectives, or how can you foster communicative activities with Schoolshape? Do you have any sort of answer or feedback around that particular area?
Do you mean link activities that you already have to Schoolshape?
I think, well, what Susan has said is, she said, how can instructors use the module to foster communicative activities based on the communicative objectives that ACFL, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages, have produced? So I don't know, I mean, when she's saying communicative, presumably, I don't know, Susan, if you could give us a bit more understanding what you mean.
I fully understand that question.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what she's talking about. And actually, I'm very pleased to get that question, because this is one aspect that I'll be coming on to in a moment, which is I think the vital part of it. I was talking earlier on, first of all, about the culture, but also the communication and the ability of students to communicate both with each other, with their teachers, and to construct dialogues and conversations out of that, which I think is vitally important to keep them talking and to develop those skills for speaking.
I think because Susan sort of clarified, she's referring to the modes of communication, the actual particularly, I don't know if you're aware of these. I mean, I've just come across them quite recently through our other webinars. So she's talking about the interpersonal, interpretive and presentational modes. I don't know if that's something that you're aware of, Peter.
Well, I'll have to say that obviously this is an area which we are constantly asked about, in that the language lab is used in countries all over the world, and so what I'm going to be talking about here is how to use it for those communicative methods. In terms of fitting into the to the actual wording of what is required by ACT-FL, obviously if you have more technical questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them offline, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. We've also got a question around sort of synchronous and asynchronous activities, but presumably, presumably you can do both, but I would have thought particularly asynchronous activities.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I'll be coming on to that in
Fantastic.
a moment. I don't blame people, because I'm going a little bit slowly here, because if you go too fast, then sometimes people just don't really understand how it works. But I'll move on a little bit faster. That's why I've done videos to get it a little bit quicker.
It's all good. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we put in a listening section there, and the point I was going to make about that is that with the audio file that you have beneath the video, it means that you can, when you're creating a worksheet, you can use any video with any audio, so you can adjust the audio according to what video you want or what level you want. Because the most difficult thing with video is to find the level of language that you want in the audio. It's very easy to find video, isn't it? But it's much more difficult to find audio at the right level for your students. So that's one of the advantages of doing it this way. Okay, so we've now inserted a speaking opportunity for the students. And so, as you can put in the title, record your answer here, or whatever it is, and then the student will be able to record their answer in that section. And when you've completed the worksheet, you'll just click the done section, and it will then be ready for students to complete. Okay, so we have therefore on the worksheet, we've got your video, we've got the listening comprehension, you've got your recording area, and you've got any of those kind of practice exercises, drag and drop, cloze tests as well. So you've got everything there. And then if you want to complete the worksheet yourself or just check that it all works, you can click the continue button.
We just had a question from Susan, Peter, if it's okay. Can two students speak together and record, like in a pair work activity, or is it more sort of for individuals to record?
They can, that's right.
Oh, they can, okay, great.
Okay, so I'm just going to move on now to talking about assigning tasks. And you probably noticed there that there is an assign button in addition to the continue button, where the teacher will be just trying out the worksheet themselves. You've got an assign button where the students can start doing the work. At this point, you can differentiate as much as you want. So, for example, here, if you're assigning work for a student in class 1A, and you can have any number of groups there, any number of classes. You are given the option of assigning to the whole class. You can select them all, or you can just choose a couple of students and assign to them. So for example, here, we're assigning the work for Rory and Tadpole, and then you have an option when they are doing the work of either allowing students to add more tutors or disable grammar checking. Now, that area there where it's asking about allowing students to add more students is really the answer to what somebody was asking about collaboration there, Joe, because when students are doing a worksheet, they have an option of sharing with anybody else who can help them. So that could actually be another teacher, it could be another student in their class, or it could be maybe a friend that they got on the other side of the world. So they can collaborate with anybody. But it may be that you don't want them to do that. You may not want them to collaborate. And so there's an option here when you're setting or you're assigning the work to disallow students to add more students, or tutors for that matter.
Very useful.
Okay, so when you've assigned work, in your teaching screen, it gives you a little drop down showing you everything that you've done to remind you what work you have, what you set or assigned, and you can click on any of the names in there and you can see any work that they've done and how far they've got. If any students have completed work, they started doing work, then you will get a notification in this area on the right-hand side telling you what is happening. And in fact, from this teaching screen, you can access any of the work or any of your students and any of the work that they've ever done. So you can search a student's name and you'll be able to see every single item, every single assignment that they've completed, how far they've got. And if you click on their name, you'll be able to enter the task that they're doing at that time. Now, if they're online, you'll be able to talk to them synchronously. If they're not online, then you will be able to add audio to their timeline, make a comment about their work if you wish. So you've got complete control over all the work that all your students are doing.
And just to clarify for anyone watching, all those names are made up, aren't they? They're not real names of students. So Toby Belch, for example, is the famous character from 12th Night, for example.
Thanks for pointing that out, Joe. Yes, yes.
Good.
Right, okay, so let's just have a look now and see what happens when the students get the work. To log in, they can either have a link directly to the language lab, or they can go to our site and log in with the login button. That will then allow them to put their school name in, and they'll be able to log in with their name. And I'll explain a little bit later how that will be done and how the student accounts are set up, but it's very, very simple. And they can log in with their name. They can actually also log in with an email address, but they don't have to have an email.
So just to clarify on that point, Neha has asked about what information do they need to set up the account. They don't need an email address, but is it the teacher that can create a code for them, or how? Can you just be really, really clear
yes,
about that feature?
Yeah, I'll show you that in a minute.
Okay.
Absolutely, it's a very good question. Basically, the teachers set up the accounts for students.
Okay.
Having said that, if you've got a student in your school who, for example, has a pen friend and the teacher has approved the pen friend, then they can work with that pen friend in a foreign country, or another teacher, or maybe a fluent speaker of the language that can help them, if they have their email address. And that person will receive a link to that piece of work, and they will then go straight to that piece of work, even if they are not, you know, if they haven't actually subscribed to Schoolshape, although they will have to go through some security areas first to get into it, but they will then be taken to that student's work, and they'll be able to work together on it. Right, okay, so we saw just now that Mr. Dumbledore had assigned some work to Tadpole. This is Tadpole, the student. You can see his name at the top right-hand side. He's logged in with his name and his password, or his email address if that's been entered in the system by the teacher. He has a notification on the right-hand side, which shows there that Mr. Dumbledore has asked him to do this work. He could also have found that if he'd gone into his learning section in that main menu. Okay, so we recognize this piece of work, and at the top right-hand side, Tadpole can actually access a little menu at the top there, which will give him access to that question that we've just had, Joe, about sharing and collaborating with other students. While we're in this little worksheet that the student is doing, I'll just mention here about the whole aspect of communicating with people abroad, and you know, student languages really being used for communication, because this is the main thrust of the system, that in addition to learning about the culture of the language, we're also communicating with the people in that country, or other people who have knowledge of that language.
That's great. So that's really helpful. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so we have here then a list of possibilities that the student could decide on to have to help him with. Now, you remember that, that little toggle area where we were assigning the work. We have the opportunity of preventing students from connecting with others or adding other tutors or teachers. If that was the case, and you did actually tick that box, then the student wouldn't be able to do this. They wouldn't be able to connect with anybody else. But in this case, they can choose the teacher, another teacher to work with them. And you, the teacher, can also, if you wish, choose another person for them to work with. So say you've assigned this work and you decide that this particular student could work quite well with Michelle Dewey, then you would choose that person, and they could be working on this worksheet with the student and helping them with it. So you're getting that connection between students working together and also the teachers.
So when you say collaborating together, do you mean that they both see the same page together, or that can they actually edit together, as in like in a Google Doc type environment, or do you mean that they both see the same page at the same time?
Well, I'll show you what the page looks like in a moment as the people are working together. But you're quite right. It's a little bit like Google Docs, but of course much more sophisticated in that they have got all the language elements in there as well, and all together on the same sheet and so on. Just to go back to the choice of collaborator here, the list of names above there are the approved teachers that are already in the system. But if there is a new teacher which has been approved by the teacher, then the student may have their email address, and they can put that in, and then that other person can join them to work with them on this particular task. And I'll just emphasize that it is just on this task. So it's not saying this student can work with this other person on anything. They can just work with them on this particular task. Right. Now, when they do that, they don't have to, but they can put their email address in there to get feedback in case they wish to do that. Right, okay, so we can see now we have this, this worksheet back, and down the bottom you can see that we have a couple of teachers in there, Tadpole and Mr. Dumbledore. Now, from that drop-down list we saw in the last screen, this student, Tadpole, decided to add Professor McGonagall. And so he's now added on this piece of work. So Professor McGonagall can now help Tadpole with the work if he wishes. The other thing that he can do is that he can set up his microphone and he can talk to him in real time if he wishes. He can also add items to the timeline in the recording so that any of those three people at the foot of the page there can talk with each other either live, synchronously, or asynchronously, making conversations within the recording. So you can see there we've got the recording has started to take place. So we've got one little section there. We then have another section and another. Now at any point, Tadpole can delete a section of the recording if he wishes. And the reason for this is that for any assessment that takes place on this particular piece of work, the person who will be being assessed is Tadpole. This is the student who's being assessed. None of the teachers who are sharing will be assessed on this piece of work. It's just him. So the reason for that is that we want students to get help from other people, but we want to feel that that help is contributing to their work and they are progressing as a result of that. So in theory, they're being motivated to invite other people to help them with their work. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, it does, and I think that's really powerful. I think that's really, really powerful. That's fantastic. So essentially, the student could record some audio, then the teacher or teachers could then give feedback, and then presumably then the student could then re-record the audio based on the feedback received.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, yeah. So the result of this is that each student potentially can not just have a recording of themselves, but they have a dialogue or perhaps just some of this foreign language that they've been speaking, and they can have some comment made by their teacher in their own language, in their native language or whatever. But it means that they have work on there which is recorded. And it means that with a few clicks of a button, you can provide speaking and potentially shared speaking to any student at any time. So this business where students are maybe only doing a little bit of speaking in their second language once a week or once a month, it really is not enough. If they can do this, then they can practice saying something in the foreign language really at any moment. They can do it all the time. You can set any number of these worksheets and they can practice as much as they can, because I'm sure we all agree that one of the magic things about being able to speak a second language is the ability of the mind to go into autopilot, isn't it? If we can say the words often, then after a bit, we get used to it. And it's just so wonderful when you can go abroad and you can just talk to foreigners and you don't really have to think about it because you have practiced speaking so often. Obviously, if you're bilingual and you've been brought up with several languages, then the effort isn't there because it's easier. But anybody can speak a foreign language very easily if they practice enough. And this is a way to do it because it can be done at any time and it can be shared. And even if they don't share with anybody else, at least they have an opportunity to say the words in the foreign language. They've got the space to do it, and they don't have to wait till they go into school and talk to their teacher because they can do it regularly. I know there are a lot of other ways that they can practice online, of course, but with this method, you have a record. There's always a record of what they said, and they've got a whole list of recordings and everything that they've done and spoken in the foreign language is there, the date on which they've done it, and anybody wanting to assess the level of any student can simply go in and listen to how well they've done. You don't need to even have them necessarily attend a speaking test because anybody who understands the foreign language or understands about the levels will be able to go in and listen to any student and see how good they are at doing a conversation.
Yeah, I particularly like that. I think that's wonderful. Could they give a written feedback as well if they wanted to, the teacher?
Absolutely, yes. I'll be coming on to that in a moment.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to, before we do that, I see we've still got a bit of time. So I'm just going to move on now to the writing because although I will be returning to the speaking because I think that's so important, but obviously we need to just go over the most basic areas of the language lab and look at the writing. So let's just have a look at that. So for writing, this is an activity. So you would click on the writing section. That would then give you a text area with an option to enter instructions for the student, and then an area for them to enter their text. Now, because the writing is just a little bit more complex, I'm going to take you into what we call the cloud writer, because when they are in that writing area, it becomes a little bit more complex, and we need to kind of understand how it all works. Now, in front of you there, can you see that all right, Joe?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely fine. Noise in the net, I can see.
Yeah, okay. So you can see there that we've got this student, Noise in our net, and she's writing in English, just to make it absolutely clear, because I'm not quite sure, what audience we've got here, but for the sake of just a demonstration, we've started writing in the language. So the students started writing. After they've written a few words or maybe a sentence, the software will make an advised judgment as to which language they're using. So this can be used for any language. And as soon as you start writing, it will detect the language that's being used. Now, as the student progresses, the software will detect any potential mistakes, maybe grammatical or spelling mistakes, but it won't correct it immediately. So it won't just give an answer, it will give some hints in a kind of scaffolded way, if you like. So rather than just saying, right, well, you're wrong, it'll try and guide the student towards the correct answer. Now, down the bottom of the sheet there, you can see there is again this select teacher opportunity. And again, the student can invite another teacher in, or maybe even collaborate with another student if you have permitted that. So the student carries on. So he says, yesterday I went to the zoo to see the animals. It was terrific. the lions and tigers were fierce. Now the software will start making a few more hints and then make some decisions about the standard of writing that is happening on this page. So you can see down the bottom, it says 25 words of American English at 95% accuracy. Now the student can correct the mistakes, and the idea really is to drive them towards getting the best possible writing that they can in the language that they're using. Now you probably notice at the bottom there that there are some other options. Apart from select teacher, they can also add a comment. So if Noisy Nanette wanted a little bit of help, say from her teacher, about the spelling, she could put a little bit of text in at the bottom and ask him about it. And if she's sent a little text, then the teacher will get a notification telling him that Noisy Nanette wants to get a bit of help. Okay, so her little text at the bottom, she says, Mr. Dumbledore, could you please help me with the spelling of tigers? And at this point, we can see that she's actually added, maybe she was waiting for her teacher to respond and he didn't wait. So she's added a couple of other people to help her with her work. So she's actually added Harry Potter and Fred Jones at the bottom there as well. Okay, so there we are. We can see that the teacher has eventually responded. He says there's only one G in tigers. See my correction. Now, in addition to the software providing answers or suggestions, we also have the possibility for the teacher to go in as if with a red pen to cross out any mistakes and put the correct answer in. So you can, as a teacher, just simply act as if you had this as a piece of paper and you can correct what they've written if you wish. Now, one of the main reasons to sort of add this kind of, I don't know, this sort of machine-driven correction and hint system is that if students are collaborating, so if you've got students whose mother tongue is in a different language, it may be that one is helping the other, but not particularly well. So it's quite nice to have a machine intervening and maybe not allowing completely wrong grammar to happen.
Yeah, I really like the interface. I like the way it's sort of subtly suggesting that students need to relook at a word or what have you. It's sort of, it's quite gentle in its approach, really. It's really nice. And I like the way that the student can ask for help if need be, and the way that the students can work on it together. I think that's great. So is that using artificial intelligence, or is it just like a way of using spell checking?
Well, I mean, they do tell me that that isn't really artificial intelligence. It isn't terribly sophisticated yet, but we are going to be, I hope, doing something like this for the speaking as well, because obviously with the speaking, it would be nice to have a little bit more support when you have students working together. I mean, it's great to get students working together and paired up and so on, but it's going back to the problem I had on the first day of teaching, that you've got 30 kids in front of you. How on earth do you speak to all of them individually? And that problem has never changed, has it? And actually, it's the same problem that we have now. In a way, although it's not good that the kids can't always be in class because of the social aspect, with working with this kind of Zoom situation, you can focus in to what they're doing on the computer in a very precise way. So we are zooming in now to every single letter, every single item of grammar that they can use. But I was very pleased to hear you say that, Joe, because a number of teachers have said, can you remove the grammar correction, because we want this to be a test. And that's quite right, because sometimes you do want to have them writing in a kind of exam situation where you just want to know how good they are at writing. And therefore, you can switch this off completely and just have them write as part of the, part of the worksheet.
I mean, I think that's true, but I also think the idea that the children get immediate feedback through prompts about their grammar, their spelling, has been proven to be even more powerful. Well, the most powerful feedback is when it is returned as soon as possible.
It is immediate, yes, that's right.
So,
yeah,
which is wonderful. I think it's lovely. I think it's great. Just on another point, in relation to the resources that you shared at the beginning, Sean has said, is Spanish-resources.com under maintenance? Have you checked that out recently, that link?
Yes, actually, some of those resources sites are under maintenance at the moment. She's absolutely right. And we are working on those to improve them. So I apologize if it's not working completely properly, but you should still be able to access the resources. I think some of the displays are not as clear as they could be at the moment.
Okay, I've not checked out the links myself, but Neha said about German as well, but it sounds like some of the content is accessible, but some of it isn't. Is that right?
Right, okay.
Well, but it doesn't matter anyway, we can come back to that, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so Charlotte said the resources can still be accessed, it's just some of the content can't be accessed at the moment, but that's,
yes,
that's fine. It's a working website.
That's right. I mean, one of the reasons for that, well, it's not really a reason, although, those resources you can access very easily from within the Language Lab. So if you're not at the moment a Language Lab users, then it's a little bit more difficult to access those resources, which are completely free. I mean, you're perfectly welcome. Anybody can use those, but they are, they do work properly if you're in the Language Lab itself.
We've just had a question about Arabic. Is it possible to use Schoolshape in Arabic, or are there plans to make a similar website available in Arabic? This is a question that comes up all the time in different webinars.
Yes, I know. Well, yes, obviously the Language Lab, it's a Language Lab. Anything you're using orally is going to work absolutely fine. The writing aspect, I think you would have to have a special keyboard, but if you could enter the text, then I'm guessing that it would work. But to be honest, I haven't actually tried it myself. But certainly, as far as the listening and speaking is concerned, it's absolutely fine for any language. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you.
So yeah, I've dealt with this really, the choosing a teacher. So I'll just put this into the writing section as well, of course. At the bottom of this page here, I mentioned there about the continuous assessment that the software will do in the writing. Of course, that's very easy for computers to do, isn't it? With the writing, they can easily assess the standard of writing. But beneath that, just as a kind of addendum to this, you can see there that we have the list of teachers or helpers, symbolized the little pictures of one person helping somebody else up. Those people will have an option, if they're online, to switch their microphone on or off, so they will be able to talk directly to the student if they wish, or indeed exchange text with them.
But just to be clear though, is that a feature that the teacher can turn off? That's what you said, wasn't it? Is that right? So it's up to the teacher to decide if he or she wants to pair certain students together, is that right? Or is it up to the student? All I'm thinking is if you get two students who are maybe, want to be silly with each other, could they do that? Or would the teacher would be in control of allowing
that's right.
them?
Yeah. Exactly. If they didn't, if the teacher didn't turn that off, then the students would be able to just say, right, well, I'd like to go and talk to so-and-so. If they were somebody else in their class, they could just pair up with them. Now, that may be fine for the teacher, because it's so fast to assign tasks in the lab. You might want to set maybe 100 tasks for them to do over a period of time as a kind of a course, and they just choose which tasks to do. The other thing they can do is that they don't actually have to. You don't have to assign them tasks. They can just go into your library and and browse around and just do any work that they want, and then they can, if they've been allowed, they can pair up with somebody else.
Right.
But yes, that's how it works.
Thank you.
Okay, so just looking at the time. So yeah, so somebody asked there about how we actually create student accounts. So I'll just go through that very quickly now. It's not a very exciting part, but it's very simple. You know, you have a list of students in your spreadsheet. So what you do is you just log into the language lab as a teacher. So you can see Albus logging in here with his password. You then go to the admin section and you can create student accounts from here. So you just click into organize students and you can just to distinguish between students and tasks. Into this area here, you will want to put some students. So you click new group, add a name for the group. And when you're adding that name, incidentally, it doesn't have to be the name of the class, the regular class that they're in. You may have some students who've been, maybe they've been away because they've been ill, or maybe there's been a storm and they couldn't get to school, or there'll be some other reason, or maybe you want a group of students who've just missed some work for some other reason. And you can create, on the fly, you can create a new group whenever you want and just assign work to them. And in all these blended learning, hybrid learning situations, that may happen quite a lot, where you've got students fitting into different categories and maybe students learning different languages even. Because with this system, you're not stuck with just teaching one language. You may find that you have students who can learn their own second language that they're fluent in from each other. So you may want to create special groups for that. And so that area is completely flexible, obviously.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there about the fact you could have lots of little groupings if you wanted to, based on the present context. I think that's really helpful, definitely.
Well, thank you. Yes, you notice at the beginning there that the first activity that I explained about, which was the drag and drop. I chose that one because it's a little bit more graphical on the screen to show. That kind of thing, if you make it into a cloze test where you don't give any of the answers, you may want to assign that to more able students, to a higher level group, for example. And you can do that very easily by differentiating and creating a group for those specific students, and just giving those students the cloze test, and giving the the less able students, or the less advanced students, you could give them the answers where they drag them in.
And could you have the same? Could you have the same student in different groups if you wanted to? So could you have, for example, yeah, you could. You could have like a whole class, but then a smaller group for a group work.
Yes, you can.
So that's great because Mr. Labidi makes the point of mixed ability groups and differentiation. So again, that's perfect for that, isn't it? That's great.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, so so you can paste in your list of students. It'll just give you a little verification, just to make sure you've got all the names right, and then it will confirm that you've entered the students into the system. And
then for the students to access the system, how do they get in? Does the teacher give them their username, or what do they need to log in?
Right. Well, first of all, you will get a confirmation screen just to check that you've done the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just confirm that you created a new student group, class 1A, and that you want to create a new Schoolshape accounts in class 1A for those students. It's just a double check, if you like, just to make sure you've done the right thing, so the right students are logging in the right way. Okay, so in answer to your question there, Joe, a little notice will come up saying, please give the following temporary password to new students to allow them to log in. Okay, so that will generate a password for that group. So you will need to send that password to them through whatever channel that you normally use when you communicate with your students. If the password is lost, so if a student loses a password, then there is a reset password function which can be used to get that back.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Very nice.
So the student can then log in, so they can log in at the site. They put in the school name, their name. If they've had a previous password, then they may have to put in an old password. But you know, this will probably be just, if it's the first time, they'll just have that password. They can put that in and put it in again just to verify, to make sure that they get in. Okay, so that's the students. And then the teacher, back to the teacher again. In the teacher's teaching screen, we can see that we have class 1A has been created, and that's what he'll be able to see. Now, within that area, you can do various things about the students, if you like. So you can delete them, you can move them around, you can do any sort of administration with those individuals. So we've got here, for example, Tom Morrow here. You could just click on his name, and then you can either delete him, you can move him to a different group, you're dragging him across into a different group. You can edit his name, or you can reset his password. Within this area, you can also then immediately decide on a task. And there are some shortcuts where you can just simply assign them some writing or some speaking without getting involved in one of those sort of longer worksheets that I've told you about. So with just a couple of clicks, you can create a speaking activity, and then they can just go straight ahead and do some speaking without any preparation on your behalf at all, apart from just telling them what to say, telling them what to do, or organizing who they're going to speak to. Or of course, you can just create one of those worksheets that we were talking about earlier on there.
We've had a question about testing, Peter, if it's okay. So
Yeah.
could you sort of clarify how the difference between sort of this sort of like formative template, and then how would you do like a summative test where you didn't want the students to use, for example, the dreaded Google Translate, or how would the test results be stored? Would you be able to, for example, export the results as an Excel spreadsheet, for example?
Right, well, we have actually just converted the lab to HTML5, and in fact in the Flash version we did have that option for tests. Now, any of these worksheets can be converted into a test. As I said, there's the option to turn off any of the grammar help and that sort of thing, and you can use it for any sort of a test, really, oral tests or oral tests or writing tests. But at the moment, any scores are just kept in the teaching screen, and it'll probably be a few weeks yet until we have an option to download the CSV.
Right, okay. But if the students wanted to be annoying and have their mobile device or take their hands off the keyboard and use, say, Google Translate, they would be able to do that. There's no like monitoring of the keyboard or that sort of thing. I know some tools incorporate that sort of. Do you know what I mean? So
I know some tools do that. This doesn't actually. It doesn't do that. No.
Okay, that's fine. So it's more, in a way, it's more of a formative assessment tool for all 4 skills, which I think it's fantastic for. That's great. But I think when you have the opportunity of exporting the results as well, that'll be amazing.
Yes, that's right. and I know obviously we are set on numbers and grades and so on, but I do think with languages, if you want to know how good somebody is at a language, you can see very clearly from one of these audio playbacks how good they are at manipulating the language, what level they are, and so on, and put a grade to that. But that doesn't necessarily fit with the assessment system that we that you happen to be using. Another reason for that, of course, is that every school, every country has their own assessment system, and it's impossible to really cater for, you know, for everybody. But
of course,
that's how it is. Yeah. Right. Where were we then? Okay. So yes. So one more little. How much more time have we got?
We're fine, we're fine. We've got about 8 minutes, but we're fine. If you want to have another 10, 15 minutes, that's fine. As long as everyone, if people want to leave or what have you, then that's fine. You don't have to say goodbyes, what have you. But no, yeah, if you want to have a bit more time, Peter, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. I mean, what I can do now is I could just go on to looking at auto grading, automatic.
Yeah, please, that'd be lovely. Yeah.
Multiple choice exercises, that sort of thing. Okay. So multiple choice then. So you just, when you're creating a worksheet, if you want to add to this worksheet, you can do it. You don't have to just build up a worksheet like this. Obviously, you can just have one exercise in each worksheet if you wish. Okay, so if you click onto multiple choice, it then gives you the option to put in your correct choices. Your question, obviously, the question that you want to be answered. So you then add the correct choices that you wish to put in, and any incorrect choices you want for each individual question. So this is just one. Obviously, if you're doing one of these AP exams, for example, where you're wanting maybe 30 or 40 on multiple choice answers, then you can do that very easily, but you just have to build it up with all the right and wrong answers. But obviously you can put it at any level you want and use any language you want. So you enter your text and your options, and it might just end up like this, for example, talking about the video. This is an elephant, a machine. Now, either of those could be the correct answer, couldn't it? It could be an elephant or it could be a machine. So that just tells the software to grade it and to accept those two as possible correct answers. And then the incorrect choices we have, you know, a rabbit, a barn owl, tortoise, and a dinosaur. So those are all the incorrect ones. Okay, so when the student logs in and sees this multiple choice exercise, it'll look a little bit like this. And so they will just make their choices. And when they make the choice, the software will work out what they've got wrong. Now, the, the auto grader is only going to accept one mark for this. It's a one possible score for it. So it's obviously, a barn owl is obviously wrong. It could be a machine, it could be an elephant. But unfortunately, because a barn owl has been selected, it's only given half a mark for that. And so you can see on the student's worksheet there that the next section is a writing section where it's asked them to start writing in any language, and that one will be assessed in the same way that I showed you in what we call Cloud Writer, which is the writing section.
With the multiple choice questions, is it possible to have more than one right answer? So, for example, if you wanted to match up verbs which go with fair, or verbs that go, sports that go with fair and sports that go with jouer, and there was more than one right answer for each, is it possible to set up a multiple choice in that way, or does it have to be only one definitive answer?
Okay, well, you get the choice of, you have the option of putting in any number of correct possible answers.
I see.
So in this case, you know, there were two correct possibilities, the elephant and the machine. Those are both possible correct answers.
I see. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, that's fine.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
We've just been asked the classic question, would you share the slides at the end of the session? I don't know if that's possible, Peter, if you've got a link.
That certainly is possible. And that's one of the main reasons, actually, why I did it as a slideshow.
As a slideshow, yeah, great, thank you.
Because I know, I mean, if we're talking about 90 minutes here, people don't, to sort of, it's very difficult to scroll through a whole video, isn't it? So I can certainly share that. And anybody who wants to have this slideshow, they're very welcome to receive it. It's actually in a Google Doc, so I can just share it.
Perfect. And I can send it out to everyone that registered as well for the webinar. Okay, I can email everyone with the link and the recording to the webinar as well. That's fine.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks very much, Joe. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, so yes, so the reason really that we're talking about this is to cater for every individual, and the whole idea of being able to kind of zoom in and seeing every little detail of what they've done, every little grammatical mistake, and yet also zooming out and talking about the culture of the country they've gone to, and having the ability really to use it in class as part of what they're doing in class. They're speaking, they're listening, they're reading, and they're writing. And also at home, where you have maybe got a large number of students on your Zoom meeting that you have to cope with and you've got to assess. So it's all about really giving individual attention to each student, no matter what level they're at, no matter what class they're at, and also no matter what language they're learning. And also to give them the opportunity, if you like, the space where they can do speaking at any time that they want, or indeed any other skill, but above all, the whole idea that they can speak and have the opportunity to have dialogues with each other, not necessarily just their teacher. And because of having that opportunity, as often as possible, that they can develop their language and just kind of use that magic part of our brains which allow us to just lock into using foreign words in a natural kind of way. So that's really the main thrust of the language laboratory. And anybody who's interested in using it, we do give a free trial. You're very welcome to contact me and set up a free trial. I also do regular meetings in schools where the computer screen is projected onto your white screen, and so if you want to have a meeting with your colleagues, I can certainly take them through the language lab, show them all the functions, and of course they can join that from wherever they are, either in school, in a staff meeting, or elsewhere. So thank you very much, Joe, for setting this up. I'm sorry we had a few freezes at the beginning there. I'm not quite sure what happened, but it seems to have worked reasonably well towards the end there anyway.
Definitely, it's been really interesting. Thank you so much, Peter, for taking the time to share all the different things that the Schoolshape can do. I think it's been really interesting, and we've had lots of nice questions as well. Just a final question, if it's okay. I'm not sure if I know the answer myself to this one. So Neha has written, is it possible to assign weighting to various activities for grading, e.g. speaking 40%, writing 20%, reading 20%, and listening 20%? I suppose what maybe might understand that, you know, could you, in your task, could you have like a set of tasks that you're weighting in different ways, or would that just be done on an individual basis?
Yes, sorry I didn't make that particularly clear on the grading section, but yes, you can set the grade for each of the individual skill according to what you want. So you can grade it. But I think you're asking there about the weighting for each of the 4 skills as a percentage. Is that what the question was?
Well, Neha's just written correct. Thank you, Joe. So I think it's a mixture of the two. I think it's really good to know that you can grade the individual task. But what I was thinking that Neha meant was maybe that you can set like a cycle of tasks and then work out the percentages of each one, possibly.
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah.
Possibly.
Well, I'm sure that would be very easy. I'm sure that would be very easy to do.
Okay.
If you know, if enough people were interested in having that, because that's what we do. You know, we develop it all the time. So that's an interesting question. So thank you very much for that.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. So if people wanted to have a trial, which I obviously would encourage them to do, they can just send you an email via the contact details you shared at the beginning, and then they can have a look, and then they can have a virtual chat with you as well, or a face-to-face chat, sharing with the department. I think that's been fantastic, and it's the fact that we're recording this. It has been, it is an hour and a half. But I think there's a lot of information there, and people can then watch it back and can see all the different things that it can do, because it can do so many things. And I love the way that you started with culture and your sort of personal testimony. That was brilliant. And then you sort of, in a way, you came up with Schoolshape as the solution to all the things you were trying to do as a fledgling, if I can say, language teacher. So that was really fascinating. Thank you so much, Peter. It's been really been a great evening.
Well, Joe, I know you've been working incredibly hard on these, and you've done a lot of webinars. So thank you very much for your work, and you're working incredibly late at night as well. So
yeah, it's nearly at 9:30.
A lot of credit for what you're doing, holding everybody together. So
no problem. It's my pleasure. Yeah, no problem.
So the other thing that people can do is they can, if they want to do it more quickly, they can go to schoolshape.com/register, and that will set the process going for setting up a language lab in your school. And a lot of schools do actually use this as a core way of delivering their curriculum, because it can be used for other things apart from languages. Now, what you said there about talking about the culture as well as a language, I was going to just mention very quickly about DLIC. This was a qualification which was the government actually funded to quite a degree a few years ago. I think calling it a diploma in languages and international communication is such a good name, because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about learning the culture of another country, getting excited about it, and also communicating, collaborating, and getting to know people in that other country or in that other culture. And I know other people, various countries have different names for this, don't they? And modern foreign languages and things, so on. But I think that's what we're all trying to do, isn't it? Get people working together, understanding each other, and hopefully making language learning the most important thing we all need to do in this day and age.
I couldn't agree more. Wow, what a powerful message to finish with. That was amazing. Oh, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now, if it's okay.
Do, Joe. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.